I have a clip from 11 years ago from Tracy. Is he still right in 2024? Let's go.
In selling, the major obstacle is often objections that customers give you that stop them from buying and stop you from selling. So
I have thoughts about this. The thing is that why do you get objections? You get objections if you push way too much. Let's see if he comes up with that.
Let me show you 9 different objections that you will get on a regular basis, and you must learn how to recognize these objections and to deal with them effectively. The first type of objection you will get is an unspoken objection. The customer has concerns with your offering.
These are unspoken objections I have on this video.
But doesn't tell you anything. The solution to unspoken objections is to let the prospect talk more. Ask open-ended questions like what and where and when and how and how, why and who and how and so on.
That is still applicable. I'm going to tell you a secret already. You don't ask these open-ended questions because you need to deal with these objections or get unspoken objections. You ask open-ended questions because that helps you to let other people think about things you want them to think about. Give it a thought.
So, lean forward, listen intently to the answers and nod. The more a prospect has an opportunity.
Nodding is giving support. Like it so far, still applicable, doesn't matter. Even if it's 11 years ago, still extremely applicable.
Opportunity to answer your questions, the more likely it is that he or she will tell you exactly what might be holding them back from buying. Ask good questions.
I don't believe that. If somebody doesn't want to buy from you, they will never tell you. They will give you excuses like you're too expensive or we're going to compare it with somebody else. By the way, if you really want to know how to deal with that, schedule a meeting with me and I will tell you how to do that.
Questions and listen carefully to the answers. The second form of objections you will get is excuses. Now these are usually instinctive reactions.
I get a lot of excuses from my producer, but it's probably not. This is probably not what this is all about, right? I see an angry producer right now behind the screen.
To any sales approach, they're not personal. Excuses are not really serious either.
But they feel always very personal. As somebody says, "I don't want to do business with you," that really hurts, you know. But again, he is absolutely right about the fact it's never personal. Never ever. In business, a lot of things are not personal.
The best salespeople, when they get an excuse, they just nod and smile and agree, and then they ask a question to take control.
It is still applicable and it depends a little bit on what it is that you sell. But I don't fully agree that you have to stay very friendly and very nice. Because at the end of the day, you spend a lot of time and effort in getting to a point where you do business yes or no. If you truly believe in what it is that you sell, you should also be able to challenge your customer a little bit.
Control of the conversation. The very best way to handle any initial sales resistance, including excuses and impulse responses, is with these wonderful words. Person says, I can't afford it, I'm not in the market, we don't need it right now, we don't want it, and so on. You say, that's all right. Most people in your situation felt the same way when I first called on them, but now they have become our best customers and they recommend us to their friends and family. This immediately...
Whoa! That is very smooth. You want to hear another smooth one? If people say, yeah, I'm not in the market, I'm not really interested, then you say very friendly, you say to them, I understand that you're saying that. I mean, we haven't done business before, so you don't know exactly what it is that we offer and the added value that we can bring to you. But that's also the reason why I really need to talk to you, to show you what we can do for you. Give it a try.
It stops people and causes them to say, oh, really? Well, what is it that you have then? And their objection is just...
I have to be honest here. Of course, it's very helpful if you know what to say if you get objections. But if I say, okay, I understand your reaction because we never spoke to each other before, nobody is going to ask me, oh, that's a very good contact objection. So what is it that you have to offer then? No. That's not how it works. At least not today anymore. Sorry.
Fall away like scaffolding falling down outside a building. The next type of objections are called malicious objections.
A malicious objection. I've heard a lot of things. Never heard of them about this. Let's find out.
Because you call on many different people, You'll occasionally call on individuals who are unhappy or angry about their current situations. Since they cannot shout at their bosses or their spouses, they take it out on the friendly salesperson. They take it out on you. Now these people...
We call those people psychopaths. Do these people really exist? That they think, okay, I've got a sales guy on the phone, let's be angry with him. Honestly, it's not that bad. When we do training, I always play a little bit of a not so easy customer, but never an angry customer. If a customer is angry at you, first of all, it's not personal, but say to him, hey, I wish you all the luck with the rest of your life, but for me, you cannot be my client. I don't like people who are angry at me. I have the feeling that this video is a little bit outdated, but let's continue.
People tend to be negative in their demeanor and behavior. The way to deal with malicious objections is to realize that you are not the target. Your job as a professional.
Absolutely true. So again, this is true. You are not the target. They just had a very bad night or day or things happened. That's why they respond in a way that you think, why do you do that to me? It's not personal.
Is to remain calm, confident, positive, and polite throughout, and then just ask more questions about what the customer is doing and what their plans are for the future. You take control by asking questions.
The guy is so friendly. So very, very friendly. I really don't know if that's gonna work in today's environment. People are a little bit more tough. I wouldn't say they're angry. The tip that I would like to give to you, I will give them at the end of this video. I will give you a couple of things that you never ever should do if you get objections. And I'm also going to tell you what you need to do to get away from these objections so you don't get objections anyway.
The fourth most common type of objection is a request for information. This is the best type of objection for you to hear because you know how to answer this as well or better than any other part of your presentation. Whenever a prospect asks for information about the results or benefits of your product or service, you're moving into an excellent field position to make a sale. Another type of objection.
I can imagine that 20 years ago that would be applicable. The video is 11 years old. I don't think it's applicable anymore. First of all, you don't get the comment very often that people do a request for information. Nowadays you get so much information on the internet. You go to a website, you go to YouTube, you get information almost everywhere. So you're probably not calling your supplier to give you information. That's not how it works, right?
Show-off objection. Sometimes prospects try to show you how much they already know about your products and services.
Mr. Know-it-all. I know them.
They make sophisticated observations or they ask you complex questions about your product or service or industry. When this happens, respond by taking the low road. Show how impressed you are by how much the prospect already knows.
You're right. But sometimes you have the feeling when people do that you're thinking, really? Really? So you think you know what you're talking about? You have no idea. You have no clue. But you can't say that, right?
Boy, you know a lot about this. I didn't realize that. Wow. In other words, flattery.
Don't overdo it, eh? Because if you overdo it, people know immediately it's fake.
It's a wonderful way to build a good quality relationship. Remember, when you make a prospect feel important, by listening to him or her with rapt attention, the prospect is much more likely to warm up and buy from you in the end. The sixth most common...
It's good advice. If you just start in sales, this is very helpful, for sure. But with all these kind of videos, it's always way more complicated than that. If you really want to build up trust, there are a couple of things you need to do already in the beginning of your meeting. I always separate contact objections from objections in a conversation. And contact objections you cannot avoid. These things just happen. But an objection is something you should stay away from because you only get objections if you are not able to ask the right questions, if you're not able to let the customer think about things you want them to think about. If you do not steer the conversation, people will come up with objections. So what do you think is better? Stay away from them or know how to deal with objections? The first one, of course.
A common type of objection is a subjective or personal objections. Now these objections are aimed at...
You smell. Yeah, if you get that kind of objection, then it's personal. You need to deal with it, okay?
You as a person. Whenever a prospect becomes critical of you, it could be a sign that you are talking too much about yourself.
The problem is, if you're talking too much, you get a lot of objections. So it's not really that they say, hey, listen, this is a stupid conversation because you don't ask me any questions. I have to be honest with this, because if we do a job interview, sometimes we do it for ourselves, of course, and sometimes we do it for our clients. You have those salespeople, they sit in front of you and they're talking for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And especially when I'm fed up with it, after 30 minutes, I say, okay, thank you very much for all the information you shared with me. How many questions do you think you've asked me? And it's surprisingly to see that a lot of those people think, I asked you a lot of questions. And then I have to disappoint them because I immediately say to them, no, you didn't ask me any questions. And that's also the reason why I'm not going to continue this conversation, because if you're an experienced sales guy and you've been talking for 30 minutes without asking any questions, sales is probably not for you. Or you need to educate yourself.
If this happens, it's important to make the customer the center of attention, and the subjective objections will stop.
Center of, okay. So the customer says, you smell. And then you say, no, you smell. Now you can't say that, of course. But it's funny, it's true, it's good advice, it's good advice.
How do you do that? You start asking questions about the customer, and
you get the point already, I think, from this video, and therefore it's still applicable in my point of view. It's all about the questioning. But what a lot of sales trainers do not tell you, that yes, of course, it's for the questioning. But if I would ask you, why do you need to ask questions? You probably will say, because you get a lot of information. But let's be honest, all the information you get, what is it that you do with it? So what we teach people, it's about how do you let people think about things you want them to think about? And of course, then you need to be very specific on the questions you ask. It's way more complicated, but the effects are way better than just asking questions for information.
Listening closely to the answers. You may also hear the objective or factual objection. Now, these are directed at
a factual objection is just a complaint. Too expensive? It's not a complaint, it's an objection. If somebody said to you, hey, I've done business with you guys in the past and you guys really screwed up in the past, a lot of people think that's a complaint, but it's not a complaint, that's an objection. Because what people do, they use old complaints to raise new objections. And I will always bring it down to the bottom line. Only reason why people come up with objections is they want to benefit from it. That's the main reason. And the reason why they come up with these objections is because you talk too much. You don't ask the right questions. You don't challenge your customer enough. It's simple, right?
Your product or service offering and the claims that you make in terms of what it will do for the customer. If you can answer an objective question like, how does this work? And how can I be sure it will do this? And what kind of proof do you have? If you can answer this type of objection, you can often close the sale.
I don't believe that's an objection. If somebody asks you how does it work and what can you tell me about it, these are really, in most cases, people really want to know.
Often ask objective objections or factual objections when they're just about ready to buy and they just need a little more reassurance. The eighth most common form of objection is what we have called general sales resistance. This always
General sales resistance. Are you in sales? Ugh, ugh. I know. That's what a lot of people say. And I always say, sales is not an art, it's a profession. You could call it even science. It's a skill. If you work hard, you can manage.
Always occurs at the beginning of a presentation. Until you neutralize this general sales resistance, the customer will be listening to you with a closed mind. When the customer relaxes and gives you permission to ask him questions, you immediately begin your pre-selected.
Good advice. The thing is that make the customer relaxed is important, but challenging your customer is also important. What I always say to my participants, start with an introduction, a very short, brief introduction of yourself, and there should be two things in there. Identification, so people know a little bit who you are, but also proof of capacity. So what is it that you've done in the past that makes you suitable to come up with solutions for their pains? Keep in mind, it should not be longer than 1 minute. But if you do that, you will see that your customer probably will also tell what it is that they do, how they see life. The first 5 minutes of a conversation is very normal to spend some time on that because you really adapt to each other. It's very powerful. Then people are very relaxed and then you can ask a lot of questions and you can also challenge your customer. Officially asking your clients am I allowed to ask you some questions? And I'm thinking to myself, no. I've got a good product. I'm gonna solve your pain. Why should I ask you permission to ask questions? It's very normal that I ask questions. It will be very stupid not to ask questions.
Open-ended questions to qualify the prospect and find out what he really needs that you can provide for him.
It's not really what they need. It's about the pain that they have. How high is the pain? And can you solve it with your solution? So it's really about pain and gain.
For example, I have found if you just say, may I ask you a question? If the prospect says yes, or may I ask you a couple of questions? When the prospect says yes.
It could be a cultural thing as well, I think. I mean, it's very polite if you do that. But you can fill oceans with very polite people, I always say. At the end of the day, it comes down to what it is that you bring. What kind of solutions that you have that can solve pain of your customers.
The prospect has also said, I will answer the questions if you ask them. This is a wonderful way to break the ice and lower resistance. The ninth, most common.
The feeling I have a little bit with this video, it's very political correct. This is what you have to do and this can happen. For sure, he's absolutely right. And the man is a legend, so who am I to judge him? But the question was, is it still applicable? And I say 50% of it.
Objection is called the last ditch objection. Now, you've made your presentation and the prospect clearly sees how she would be better off with your product or service. She knows and understands what you're selling and how much you're asking. She's on the verge of making a buying decision, but she still hesitates. In this case, you listen with respect to their final objections and then assure the prospect that yours is an excellent product or service.
Again, this happens because you probably were not able in the conversation to find out the pain. If you are very thirsty and I'm offering you a glass of water, would you still say, no, let me think about it? That's not going to happen. Of course you will take the glass of water. In a conversation, it's also important that you create a sense of urgency.
Service at a good price, and that everyone who is using it today is very happy with their decision. You have then overcome the last-ditch objection, and you can go on to close the sale.
If people postpone, I advise you to ask the question, okay, just imagine you have to make a decision right now, on the spot, based on this conversation. Would you choose my solution? You can always try. You get a yes or a no out of it, and you can pick it up from there. I think it's a little bit too friendly. Being friendly, being polite is crucial. But you also need to take guidance in the conversation. You need to lead the conversation. And if you're so friendly, like what he's explaining here and how he's doing it, I'm not quite sure if you lead your conversation. I'll promise you what not to do. If you get objections, the first reaction should be, oopsie, I've been pushing way too much. What it is that you should not do is that you should not attack your customer. You should also not ignore it. So you get an objection and you say, coffee. What you also not should do is that you repeat the objection. A lot of people do that because they want to buy time, right? So if somebody says to you, you're too expensive. Okay, so you find us too expensive. Yes, you're way too expensive. The problem is you make it bigger. What you also should not do is that you minimize the problem or that you give your own opinion. More importantly, make sure you structure your conversation. Challenge your customer, let them think, make them think. Make them think about things that are important to them, but they never thought about before. If you do that, you get granted a lot of added value. That's way more important than how to deal with objections. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you in the next video.